about my upbringing.
Yeah. Now, you are not trans.
I am.
You're just
trans.
You're trans too? Mm-hmm. No, you're not.
I am.
So what are you?
I'm non-binary.
Oh, all right. Come on. I don't mean to be different, but you're not saying you're a man.
I'm not saying I'm a man now.
And you would have at some point in your life said you're a woman.
This exchange gets to the heart of one of the most difficult arguments in modern politics. If gender identity is separate from biological sex, what actually defines the identity being claimed? What makes this conversation revealing is that it moves beyond slogans and into definitions. The guests argue that being transgender or non-binary is about an internal identity and a relationship with the social expectations traditionally associated with men and women, but the questioning keeps returning to an obvious difficulty. If those traditional roles do not determine whether somebody is male or female, can rejecting those roles determine that somebody isn't a man or a woman? And that matters far beyond one campus conversation. Similar questions now collide with debates over equality law, schools, healthcare, women's spaces, and the language public institutions are expected to use. The political challenge is finding a framework that protects the dignity of transgender people while still allowing difficult questions about sex, identity, and definitions to be asked without treating disagreement itself as hostility. So where do you draw that line? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe to Debate Central. And if you value serious debates where difficult claims actually get tested, give the video a like.
Transgender.
Demi.
I did. Ferris. I didn't persuade you. First of all, thank you for coming to the lecture, and then thank you for your questions, and then for sitting down. I take it you did not agree with me coming in. Did I persuade either of you? I don't know.
No.
Okay.
Not particularly, no.
The topic of the conversation was abortion. Mm-hmm. You asked about transgenderism.
I did.
I didn't persuade you on that.
No, not really.
What it means. When did you start to identify as a woman?
What makes you say that I identify as a woman? Because I actually didn't assert that.
I was right. I don't know.
Is it just pattern recognition? Do I just look like one of the transes?
You're wearing a dress.
So yeah,
first hint.
Yeah. Have you heard of a femboy? Do you know what that means?
Now I have, but I don't know what it means.
Okay. It's feminine men. They wear a lot of dresses. It's cool. But I'm not a femboy. I identify as a trans woman.
Okay. So I was right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You were correct.
But a femboy is different than a trans.
Yes, they are. They're quite different.
What's the difference?
So a femboy still retains their male identity and pursues femininity, whereas a trans woman actually identifies as a woman.
What does that mean, though? If I pursue Sicilian identity, then I would identify as Sicilian. Feminine is good.
Yeah,
that's what women are.
I would agree with that.
But then, if a femboy pursues feminine identity, he would identify as female.
He would identify as feminine, not necessarily female. I think you and everyone at the Daily Wire would agree that feminine and female are not synonymous.
Well, men can be effeminate.
Yeah, actually, feminine.
But that's different than feminine.
Feminine. How would you define feminine versus effeminate?
Feminine is good, and it's what women are when they act like women. And effeminate is bad, and it's what men are when they act like women.
So yeah, we could say a femboy is a boy who is effeminate. Well, then trans woman actually doesn't retain the male identity and chooses to identify as a female.
Okay, but then to loop back around to my first question, when did you start to identify as transgender?
Started to identify as transgender. Internally, I've noticed the sort of mismatch between my identity and the body that I was given and the roles that society has placed upon me. That mismatch was pretty clear from a very young age. I'm not going to pretend that I was a woman all along. I was born with a female brain. But I'd say probably since around 4K, like school.
4K?
Like 4-year-old kindergarten, like preschool.
Okay. What do you think caused it? If you say you weren't, it's not like you were born in the wrong body or something, then what do you think caused it?
I think it's quite simple, really. I think some people like ketchup and some people don't. I wanted to live my life this way. I wanted to pursue these characteristics, these traits.
No, I'm not denying that you want or
that I want to,
but I'm just kind of asking why.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same reason why anybody identifies as the gender they were assigned at birth. It just feels kind of natural.
When did you publicly start doing it? Do you think maybe it had anything to do with?
I'd say I came out as trans to everyone except for my family members, because it wasn't safe in my household.
Where it wasn't safe.
Why wasn't it safe?
Yeah, I've just heard it from people.
I don't want to get into the grotesque details, but I was in a pretty abusive household. My father was not very accepting, but my mother.
Do you think maybe that might have had anything to do with?
No, the abuse and whatnot didn't really I don't see any correlation with that in my gender identity. I could see the look on your face.
Because I've just
I see the
heard
talking point.
I've heard it's not just. I mean, I've just heard it from people who have detransitioned, or that sometimes that correlates.
Yeah, I don't just trust me. I'm not proud to say that I grew up in an abusive household, and I also happen to be trans. I don't want to fuel that statistic, but I'm also not going to be dishonest about my upbringing.
Yeah. Now you are not trans.
I am.
You're
They are trans.
You're trans too. No, you're not.
I am.
Non-binary.
I didn't know what.
So what are you?
I'm non-binary. Until
Oh,
I
all
was
right.
14, 15.
I don't mean to be different, but you're not saying you're a man.
I'm not saying I'm a man now.
And you would have at some point in your life said you're a woman. Perhaps.
I don't think I ever said I was a woman.
A little girl. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
You did, okay. But then when did you decide you're non-binary?
I didn't know what transgender or non-binary was until I was 14, 15.
Most people had not heard of it until recently.
I mean, it existed, but I hadn't heard of it.
I suppose we'll perhaps agree to disagree on that.
You don't think it existed until recently?
No, I think people have been confused about their sex, and I think they've had all sorts of aberrant desires for all of history. But I don't think it's a real category, basically. So I don't mean it in any disrespectful way. I just don't think I don't think it's possible to have a male body but be a female, because I don't think that's how body and soul or how identity actually works.
So I think what we're saying is that transgenderism, let's just say as an ideology, has existed for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The first books that were burned in the Holocaust were about transgender people, about sexual studies.
But, well, yeah, there was all sorts of sort of sexual, and it goes back obviously much further than the 1940s. People had these desires. But it is I suppose the difference would be transvestitism has existed for all of history. Always been sort of, cabarets and red light districts and things like that. But the ideology, meaning the view that a man could say he really is a woman, or a woman could say she really is multiple, they or them, or not either a man or a woman. That's a relatively new ideology. That's probably true.
No.
Not the behavior, but
we have, looking back, obviously historical records going back thousands of years get kind of shaky just because, we aren't able to preserve text that long, and maybe text even didn't exist, but
they did exist. We actually have...
Not for all of human history.
Well, thousands of years, yeah, but not like...
Oh, not going back to Adam in the garden. That's probably true.
But there's evidence of people with assigned male skeletons in traditionally female clothing and attire in burial, and we have the same vice versa. People, this is one of the specific examples I'm thinking of was Norse. There was a female skeleton that was buried with traditionally male burial rites and clothing.
How do they know the skeleton's female?
Well, I said female because obviously I believe that gender is something social rather than just biological, but
the scientists were able to identify it by the skeleton.
We know that sex is unambiguous.
Yes.
I don't think we're denying that.
There's this odd idea among conservatives that transgender people don't understand that biological sex exists, or that we're deluded.
Some don't. Some don't. Some do. You obviously do, but some don't. You said that you...
No.
I have yet to meet anybody.
I've yet to meet
I've
anyone
seen people
who's
clipped out of
genuinely-
context to look like that, but I haven't.
Those people are talking to me. These are people, I promise you, I've spoken to these people on camera in some cases. But in any case, you don't feel that way. So you're
felt that way.
You're non-binary.
Mother.
You said that you came to this realization at 14.
Something.
What do you think kind of
wasn't really
pushed you over that edge at 14?
I think intense emotional distress at the prospect of needing to navigate through life being someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's girlfriend, someone's wife, someone's mother. That's just
even to yourself, or you're just saying
something that wasn't really a role that I wanted to fill, and a role that I felt intensely distressed at the prospect of needing to fulfill.
Why is that?
It's difficult to explain, and would be difficult to explain in a very short period of time. It's just one of those things that you feel deep down in your soul.
Do You mean it would be difficult to explain even to yourself, or you're just saying it would be difficult to articulate this thing that I
It's
understand?
difficult to articulate. It's kind of an abstract thing.
The cause of gender dysphoria and this discomfort with your sex assigned at birth in these roles is still pretty widely debated, even in the woke scientific community.
And there would seem to be, even among the pro-trans kind of woke, a presumed plurality, or multiplicity rather, of causes. Like some people can fall into this as a bit of a sexual fetish.
That isn't transgender, though. That's
some guys who dress up like women will openly state that they're the Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, said they fell into their transgender identity largely through pornography, and others will say that as well. Now you might say, well, it wasn't pornography; it was because of I wanted to wear a dress when I was 4 years old or something. But I'm just saying, in some cases, it would appear to be more of a sexual fetish. For some people, it might be caused by some emotional distress. For some people, it might be caused by any number of other factors. Again, I'm just repeating what I've heard from the left. I'm not even stating.
I mean, the material.
I don't think the left says that.
The material.
The Wachowski brothers certainly do.
That's
they're
two
trans.
people.
The most famous
material
transgender identifying
presence
people in
of
the world.
somebody wearing
That is
a dress with a male body.
wildly false.
The material presence of a man in a woman's dress perhaps could come about as a sexual fetish. I think we agree on that, but I don't think that. I think what we're trying to say is that that's a very different thing than we're describing.
No, I guess that's what I'm saying too. That there are these. So we all agree there are these different causes for this kind of identity.
There's so much more to say. First, though, go to preborn.com/Knowles. I am here today because exactly 34 years ago, almost to the minute, my mother chose life. You are here today because your mother chose life. The miracle of life is a gift that everyone deserves because every life is precious. That is why this show is partnered with Preborn's network of clinics. These ultrasounds are more than just a medical procedure. They're a gateway to a mother's heart. The moment she hears her baby's heartbeat, the odds of her choosing life double. One ultrasound costs only $28, but any amount will help. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your donation will save babies. To donate securely, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That is pound 250, say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Knowles, KNWLES. I really support this organization. Please donate as generously as you can. Preborn.com/Knowles. You came not to talk about transgenderism. You asked me about abortion. So you support abortion.
Absolutely.
And you support it. Do you support abortion? We didn't even talk about it, even though this is you do.
Yeah.
You won't need one. There's nothing to do.
No, I won't need an abortion anytime.
And you might not either because you're transgender or non-binary.
Do you believe that transgender people are all celibate?
I'm just a little confused as to what non-binary means.
Non-binary means I am not a man or a woman, regardless of what parts I was bestowed.
Okay. What you're saying is your body has nothing to do with whether you're a man or a woman. All of these terms
correct.
just mean kind of whatever you want them to.
I think oftentimes the gender identity does describe a relationship to one's body. For example, if I were to say I am a transgender woman, I'm directly asserting that I am a woman and that I have, male genitalia.
Or you could have gone under the knife and lost your male genitalia.
I could have. Yeah.
So you could be asserting that too. So I guess that's what I'm saying. It seems like you could just, all of these terms just mean kind of whatever you want them to mean. What does that mean in that
No, not really. I would describe womanhood as
It's
pretty concrete definition.
So you just said to be a transgender woman, I have to be wearing a dress or look like this, but
I didn't say I have to. I said that's just how I like.
What's the concrete definition of a transgender woman?
Describe somebody who is assigned male at birth who identifies and pursues womanhood.
Okay. And what is womanhood? Not to sound like Walsh, but what is womanhood then? What does that mean in that statement?
I would describe womanhood as a very subjective
But you just
concept.
also said we're talking about things that are concrete, and that's all. I'm just trying to grab onto something. What is the actual definition of the thing that you are using to define transgenderism at the age of?
I would describe womanhood as a set of characteristics associated with females, usually.
But that's a circular definition, and even the way you said it, I would describe, but I'm not asking you to describe anything. I'm asking if you can offer a definition. Because it gets to the heart of your identity, which is you're 4 years old, you say, I don't really feel like a man. How would you even know what that would mean at the age of 4? And how would you know what that would mean now to feel like a woman? You said you reject those roles.
Because there are a variety of traditions associated with the male and female sex, and I've decided that I'd rather subscribe to the ones associated with the female sex.
But how would you even know what that is?
How would I even know what the traditions associated with the female sex are?
Yeah, I mean, they could be just a caricature.
I know that mom stays at home and that dad goes to work. I know that all.
But you would disagree with that. There are these
No,
you said you reject those roles.
I understand what a traditional gender role is. I don't reject that it as a concept exists. I'm not comfortable with these social expectations, therefore I am going to adhere to different social expectations that are generally
But that's not what
assigned
you're
to the
saying.
opposite sex. Yeah, it is.
No, you're not.
I'm saying it right now.
Well, now you are, but that's not previously what you said. Previously what you said was,
What makes that exchange politically important is not simply that two sides disagree about transgender identity. The deeper problem is that they appear to be using different definitions of the same words. And once that happens, even a basic conversation about policy becomes extraordinarily difficult. The central challenge raised in the clip is definition. If being a woman is primarily a matter of internal identity, the obvious follow-up is, what does that identity actually refer to? If the answer is femininity, social expectations, clothing or traditional roles, critics will immediately point out that none of those things determines whether somebody is a woman. A woman does not cease to be a woman because she rejects motherhood, dresses conventionally masculine, dislikes traditionally feminine interests, or refuses traditional gender roles. And that creates the contradiction the questioning was trying to expose. On one hand, traditional expectations about masculinity and femininity are presented as social constructs that people should be free to reject. On the other, discomfort with those expectations can become part of the explanation for identifying outside one's sex. Those two propositions are not automatically impossible to reconcile, but they require a much clearer explanation than political slogans normally provide. There is another important distinction here. Gender nonconformity and gender identity are not necessarily the same claim. A feminine man does not necessarily claim to be a woman, just as a masculine woman does not necessarily claim to be a man. Indeed, one of the freedoms modern Britain has spent decades expanding is precisely the freedom to reject stereotypes without having your sex questioned because of it. That is why this argument has consequences far beyond terminology. In Britain, questions involving sex and gender now intersect with schools, healthcare, sport, prisons, changing facilities, data collection, and equality law. Those institutions cannot operate entirely on philosophical ambiguity. Eventually, somebody has to write a policy, interpret a rule, or decide which criteria apply. And when public institutions use terms differently from significant numbers of the people governed by those institutions, political distrust follows. But there is an equally important warning for the other side of this debate. Disagreement with gender identity theory does not justify treating transgender people as caricatures or assuming that every person's circumstances have the same explanation. The participants themselves discuss personal experiences, including an abusive upbringing. That deserves to be treated as an individual experience rather than turned automatically into proof of a sweeping theory about why somebody identifies as transgender. That distinction matters because serious political debate requires more than finding an anecdote that confirms what you already believe. And notice something else in this conversation. Eventually the debate moves from identity to causation. Why does somebody experience gender dysphoria or profound discomfort with their sex? The transcript offers several possible explanations and assertions, but it does not establish one universal cause. That uncertainty should produce intellectual caution rather than absolute certainty from either direction. The political failure occurs when uncertainty itself becomes unacceptable. If politicians, universities, broadcasters, or institutions decide that certain definitions cannot even be questioned, they risk replacing argument with doctrine. But equally, if critics behave as though every transgender person's experience can be dismissed with a joke or a single explanation, they stop analyzing the issue and start caricaturing people. Democratic society should be capable of something more demanding than either approach. It should be possible to say that biological sex is materially relevant in certain areas of public policy while treating transgender people with dignity. It should be possible to investigate gender dysphoria without assuming the conclusion before the investigation begins. And it should certainly be possible to ask somebody who advances a definition to explain what that definition means. Because ultimately, that is what this exchange exposes. The argument underneath the argument is really about dresses, labels, or whether somebody behaved a particular way at 4 years old. It is about whether subjective identity can provide an objective basis for rules that affect everybody else. And if it can, where the boundaries of that principle actually lie. Those are difficult questions. They deserve careful evidence, precise language, and open debate rather than intimidation from either camp. And until politics becomes comfortable answering those questions directly, rather than retreating into competing slogans, this argument is not going anywhere.